A family finally found their missing daughter after 8 years, but they soon realized something evil had returned with her. The film begins by showing a small family returning home after buying various household necessities. During the drive back, the atmosphere feels warm and peaceful. Camille is sitting in the car with her husband and their children. To make the trip less boring, the father plays cheerful music while inviting Layla, their young daughter, to sing along with him. However, the noise seems to irritate Camille, and she eventually turns the music off. Not long afterward, they arrive at their home, an old house that looks worn down and isolated far from other people. Moments after arriving, Layla notices that her pet bird has died for no apparent reason. Camila and her husband are visibly shocked by the sight, as if they immediately realize that something terrible is about to happen. Because of this, they quickly tell the children to stay outside and not wander anywhere, while the two of them head toward a hidden part of the house. Inside, there is a secret room containing a small pyramid. Beside the pyramid lies a concealed entrance leading down into an underground passageway. Using only minimal lighting, they walk through the dark tunnel until eventually stopping in front of an ancient coffin known as a sarcophagus. The atmosphere feels incredibly unsettling, especially when Camille's husband begins asking whether the time has finally come. To make sure of something, they slowly open the sarcophagus and discover a mummy lying inside. Her husband asks once again whether the figure has awakened. But just moments after the question leaves his mouth, the light they are carrying suddenly goes out, plunging everything into darkness. When the light finally comes back on, Camille, with a tense expression on her face, says that the figure is not awakened yet. However, only seconds later, the mummy suddenly moves and startles her.
قوليلي هو صاحي؟ الحمد لله.
The lid of the sarcophagus unexpectedly falls, causing a large chain hook to snap loose before slamming directly into her husband's face and killing him instantly. Sometime later, the story shifts to the Cronin family, who are now living in Cairo. The family consists of Charlie, his wife Larissa, and their 2 children, Katie and Sebastian. Charlie works as a television news anchor, and one day, his broadcast happens to be playing inside their house. But instead of praising him, Katie jokingly criticizes her father for moving his hands too much while presenting the news.
Pepperoni pizza?
Okay. Sure, what has caused the current up schemes in water management and irrigation?
We need to practice this more or I'll fail at it.
Hearing that, Larissa laughs and agrees with her daughter, teasing Charlie by suggesting that he should tone down his dramatic gestures a little. One day, while Katie is playing alone in the backyard, a mysterious woman wearing a head covering suddenly appears. The woman is revealed to be Camille, the same woman seen at the beginning of the story. Camille approaches Katie in a very friendly manner, acting as if they have already known each other for a long time. It turns out Camila had secretly been visiting Katie for quite a while, often bringing her candy to slowly gain her trust. Even Camila's daughter, Layla, had visited several times to play with Katie, which made Katie completely comfortable around them. Because of this growing trust, Katie eventually begins seeing Camila almost like a second mother. However, Katie never tells her family about Camila's existence and keeps everything a secret. During that meeting, Camila gives Katie an apple, without Katie realizing that the apple is actually being used as part of a ritual. Only moments after Katie accepts it, an insect suddenly crawls out from inside the apple and slips into her mouth. Around the same time, Charlie accidentally discovers a large number of candy wrappers hidden inside Katie's toy house.
Like a lot of candy?
No.
Babe.
Feeling suspicious about how many there are, Charlie asks Sebastian where all the candy came from. That is when he learns that the candy was given by Katie's mysterious friend, who often met her secretly in the backyard garden. Hearing this immediately makes Charlie uneasy, and he quickly rushes outside to look for Katie. But when he reaches the backyard, Katie is already gone, and all he finds is her toy lying abandoned on the ground. Panic instantly begins to set in. Charlie desperately searches in every direction while a powerful sandstorm and heavy winds make it difficult for him to see clearly. In the distance, he briefly catches sight of a woman running away while carrying a small child he believes is Katie. Charlie chases after them with all his strength, but the storm and the chaos around him allow the woman to disappear without a trace. After the incident, Charlie and Larissa immediately report Katie's disappearance to the Cairo police. There they meet Detective Zaki and an older detective named Ismail. Unlike Zaki, who appears genuinely determined to help, Ismail acts cold and suspicious toward the couple, causing the investigation to move frustratingly slowly. They explain that missing person cases in the city are extremely common, and that hundreds of young women have previously been found dead without any clear answers. With endless bureaucracy and so many unsolved cases piling up, Katie's disappearance gradually becomes another unresolved mystery with no certainty of ever being solved.
This is her. This is just from a week ago. Somebody, whoever took her, was giving this to her.
When was the last time you saw Katie?
About 3 p.m.
ممكن هم اللي قتلوها بالغلط
Guys,
أو ممكن بيكذبوا.
What the fuck is your problem?
Time passes, and 8 years later, the Cannon family no longer lives in Cairo. They have moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where they now live together with Larissa's mother, Carmen. Even after all those years, Katie's disappearance still leaves a deep wound within the family. Charlie continues living with Sebastian and his youngest daughter, Maud, while keeping old photographs of Katie inside his car. Meanwhile, Larissa has never truly moved on either, and she remains haunted by the pain of losing her daughter night after night.
Mom, let's go.
The story then shifts back to the eastern desert of Egypt, where a major tragedy has just occurred. A cargo plane is mysteriously reported to have crashed in a remote area, leaving the entire aircraft shattered into pieces. A witness who saw the incident immediately reports it to the authorities, claiming that neither the pilots nor any passengers survived the crash. However, among the wreckage of the completely destroyed aircraft, there is one object that appears entirely untouched, an ancient sarcophagus without even a single scratch on its surface. The strange discovery prompts the authorities to quickly send the sarcophagus to experts for further examination. When the sarcophagus is finally opened, everyone is left stunned after finding a mummy lying inside. What shocks them even more is the realization that the mummy is actually Katie, Charlie's daughter who disappeared 8 years ago. The experts immediately document every detail of the discovery and gather evidence before handing everything over to the police. But after conducting further examinations, they discover something impossible. Katie is not dead. Even though her body looks like that of a mummy, her heartbeat is still present, meaning she is somehow still alive. Because of this, Katie is rushed to the hospital as quickly as possible for emergency medical evaluations. At the same time, Charlie receives a call from the United States Embassy in Cairo, informing him that his daughter has been found alive. Upon hearing the unbelievable news, Charlie and Larissa waste no time and immediately leave for Cairo. Long story short, they eventually arrive in Cairo and are introduced to the doctor treating Katie. Before allowing them to see her, the doctor warns Charlie and Larissa to prepare themselves because their daughter has changed drastically from the last time they saw her. During the examination, the doctor explains that, surprisingly, all of Katie's vital signs remain extremely stable. Physically, her body even appears unusually strong. However, the real problem is not her physical condition, but her mental and psychological state. For years, Katie is believed to have survived under extreme conditions that caused severe damage to her skin due to malnutrition and the lack of normal environmental exposure. On top of that, Katie suffers from severe psychological trauma that has drastically altered her behavior, ranging from sitting silently without any response to suddenly becoming violently aggressive. To keep her condition under control, the doctors are forced to constantly administer high doses of sedatives. According to the doctor, Katie may still have a chance to recover if she can return to living with her family again. Even so, they also warn Charlie and Larissa that there is a possibility Katie may never truly become the same child she was 8 years ago. The explanation only convinces Charlie even more that something far more sinister lies behind Katie's disappearance. Wanting answers, he later meets with Detective Zaki. From her, Charlie learns that Katie was discovered inside an ancient sarcophagus estimated to be around 3,000 years old that was being transported illegally. The police suspect that historical artifacts like these are often used as covers for smuggling operations because they rarely receive thorough inspections. This leads them to believe that Katie may have been part of a human trafficking operation all along. Although there is still no solid evidence, Zaki promises Charlie that she will do everything possible to uncover whoever is responsible for this.
sarcophagus, between 2,000 and 3,000 years old. It's the perfect human trafficking cover.
Are you gonna do a better job of finding who took our daughter?
Yes.
In the end, Charlie and Larissa decide to bring Katie back home to Albuquerque so she can return to the comfort of her family environment. Naturally, Katie's return after 8 long years becomes an incredibly emotional moment for the entire family. Even Maud, who has only known Katie through stories, looks excited to finally meet her older sister for the first time. But the happiness slowly turns into discomfort once they truly see Katie's condition in person. Katie barely speaks at all. She simply lies there silently, staring blankly at the people around her. Even when Maud warmly introduces herself, Katie gives no response like a normal person would. Carmen, their deeply religious grandmother, believes prayer may help calm Katie's spirit. However, instead of improving, Katie suddenly reacts aggressively and attacks without warning. She violently lashes out until Larissa is forced to calm her down with sedatives. Charlie immediately contacts Detective Zaki and asks for help investigating who Layla might be. The problem is that the name is far too common in Cairo. There are simply too many people with the same name, making it almost impossible to identify the correct person based on a single word alone. Because of this, Zaki suggests Charlie search for additional clues, perhaps old letters or anyone connected to Katie before her disappearance. Charlie begins reopening Katie's old belongings and searching for any detail that may have been overlooked over the years. Eventually, he discovers an old letter signed by Layla Khalil. In the letter, Layla writes about how deeply saddened she is by what happened to Katie and says she never wanted something like that to happen to her best friend. Realizing he finally has a full name, Charlie immediately sends the information to Detective Zaki. This time, the clue is enough to move the investigation forward. That same night, another strange incident occurs inside the Cannon household. Maud suddenly hears Katie softly calling her name from somewhere near her room. Without realizing it, Maud slowly walks toward the sound until she reaches Katie's door. But then she starts sensing that something is wrong. The voice does not sound like her sister at all. Before Maud can run away, her body is suddenly lifted into the air by an unseen force.
Your little piggy stays.
The next morning, Charlie returns to Professor Bixler to learn whether there has been any progress translating the ancient writings. This time, the professor successfully translates one of the names that appears repeatedly throughout the text. The name is Nazmaranian. According to ancient Egyptian legends, Nazmaranian is an ancient demon believed to live within the shadows of humanity. It is known as an entity that destroys families from within, influencing parents to harm their own children while spreading sickness, chaos, and destruction wherever it goes. Ancient records even describe Nazmaranian as a threat capable of driving entire civilizations toward extinction. What confuses Professor Bixler, however, is that the name Nazmaranian should have disappeared from history more than 2,000 years ago. Because of that, he cannot understand why references to this ancient demon have suddenly resurfaced now.
Nazmaranian. This one word repeated over and over again.
Meanwhile, at school, Maud's behavior begins changing drastically after the events of the previous night. She becomes more aggressive and starts using disturbing language she has never spoken before. Elsewhere, Detective Zaki finally tracks Layla Khalil to a remote old house that looks strikingly similar to the one seen at the beginning of the story. Entering the house alone, Zaki finds the place eerily silent and abandoned. However, inside the house, she notices a small pyramid that immediately catches her attention. After searching further, she discovers a hidden passage leading into an underground chamber. There, Zaki finds another ancient sarcophagus covered in old Egyptian symbols. Feeling that the place hides something much bigger, Zaki prepares to call for backup. But before she can, Camille suddenly appears and attacks her without warning. Fortunately, Zaki reacts quickly and shoots Camille to stop her. Not long afterward, a young woman suddenly appears and sees Zaki standing near Camille's body. Instead of approaching, the woman panics and runs away, causing Zaki to chase after her immediately. Strangely, the woman suddenly stops in an empty area and hurriedly begins digging into the ground. After pulling out a buried box, she hands it over to Zaki. When Zaki opens it, she discovers an old VHS tape labeled with one name, Katie. Realizing that the object might contain the answers to the case she has been investigating all this time, Zaki immediately brings the mysterious woman to the police station for further questioning. It is there that the woman's identity is finally revealed. She is Layla Khalil, Katie's childhood friend whose name Charlie had previously sent to be investigated. Hoping to uncover the truth, Zaki first decides to watch the VHS tape given by Layla. However, the contents of the recording turn out to be far more horrifying than she ever expected. In the video, Camila can be seen speaking directly in front of the camera about an ancient ritual. Camila explains that the human body can be used as a vessel, but children are considered the ideal hosts because they are purer, more innocent, and capable of lasting much longer. The recording then reveals disturbing rituals that have been passed down through generations within their group. Even though Zaki still does not fully understand the true purpose of the ritual, she slowly realizes that Katie's disappearance 8 years ago was likely never an ordinary kidnapping. Still confused about what the ritual is truly meant for, Zaki later confronts Layla again and demands a more complete explanation. But during the interrogation, Layla refuses to say a single word. At first, Zaki assumes the woman is intentionally staying silent. Eventually, Layla slowly opens her mouth and reveals that her tongue has been cut out. That horrifying condition is what makes it extremely difficult for her to speak. Even so, when Zaki asks who could have done something so terrible to her, Layla forces herself to answer. Struggling painfully with every word, she reveals that Camila, her own mother, was the one who cut out her tongue. Layla explains that she once tried to expose her family's secrets to other people. Fearing that Layla would reveal the truth about the rituals and the sarcophagus, Camille chose to silence her daughter permanently. Despite her difficulty speaking, Layla still desperately tries to warn Zaki about one very important thing. Katie should never have been removed from the sarcophagus. According to Layla, the sarcophagus is not simply an ancient coffin, but a prison used to seal away something extremely dangerous. If Katie remains outside of it for too long, a terrible disaster will eventually happen. Layla also explains that their family never originally intended to move the sarcophagus from its hidden location. However, not long before the crash, the area where they lived was expected to be hit by massive flooding, forcing Camille and her followers to transport the sarcophagus to a safer place using a cargo plane. Even Layla's brothers helped during the relocation process, but unexpectedly the plane crashed, leading to the sarcophagus eventually being discovered by the authorities. No longer strong enough to force herself to speak, Layla asks for paper and something to write with. Through handwritten notes, she begins explaining everything to Zaki in greater detail. The more Zaki reads, the more she realizes that Charlie's family is in terrible danger. Without wasting another second, Zaki immediately tries calling Charlie to warn him. However, none of her calls are answered. Fearing that something horrible may have already started happening, Zaki quickly takes the VHS tape and flies to Albuquerque herself to meet Charlie before it is too late.
Stop.
Everyone is horrified by what they witness except for Maud, who reacts in a deeply unsettling way. Instead of crying or feeling scared, she actually laughs while watching her grandmother die. Carmen's death becomes a devastating blow to the family, and a few days later, a small funeral is held, attended by relatives and close friends. At first, the atmosphere feels normal, filled with grief and mourning. But just like the strange incidents before, something disturbing happens once again. In the middle of the funeral, Maud's behavior suddenly changes drastically. She begins acting completely out of control, pulling out her own teeth one by one before eventually wearing her grandmother's dentures. At the same time, nobody realizes that Katie has somehow escaped from her room, despite being locked inside. Maud, who now appears to be under the influence of some dark force, suddenly attacks one of the guests. Meanwhile, Katie slowly approaches Carmen's coffin. In front of everyone frozen in terror, Katie climbs inside the coffin and begins drinking blood from her grandmother's corpse. The horrifying sight instantly throws the entire funeral into complete chaos and panic. That night becomes one of the most traumatic nights the Cannon family has ever experienced. In the end, Charlie manages to drag Katie back into her room before tightly restraining her hands, legs, and body to prevent her from escaping again and hurting anyone else. Not long afterward, Detective Zaki finally arrives in Albuquerque after traveling all the way from Cairo. She brings the VHS tape Layla previously gave her because she believes it contains the answers behind the terrifying events surrounding Katie. When the recording is finally played, Charlie and Larissa at last discover the horrifying truth that had remained hidden all these years. The tape reveals the ancient ritual Katie was forced to undergo 8 years earlier. It turns out the ritual is not something new, but a tradition that has been passed down through countless generations. Katie was merely the 82nd vessel in the ritual's long history. For centuries, human bodies have been used as containers to imprison Nazmaranian, so the demon's power remains sealed and unable to roam freely in the outside world. The problem is that the human body cannot last forever. As the host grows older, the vessel slowly weakens and deteriorates. That is why Camille's group continuously searches for replacements generation after generation. Children are specifically chosen because their bodies are considered purer and capable of containing Nazmaranian for much longer periods of time. It is at this moment that Charlie and Larissa finally realize the horrifying truth that Katie had been selected as the next vessel from the very beginning. However, there is one thing nobody could have predicted. The sarcophagus that was supposed to keep Katie permanently sealed had to be relocated because of the threat of massive flooding. During the relocation process, the cargo plane crashed, which ultimately led to the sarcophagus being discovered by the authorities. Ever since Katie was removed from the sarcophagus and brought back into the outside world, the seal restraining Nazmaranian has gradually begun weakening. In other words, the longer Katie remains outside the sarcophagus, the stronger Nazmaranian becomes. This is why Layla desperately warned everyone that Katie should never have been taken out of the sarcophagus. Hearing the full truth leaves Charlie and Larissa devastated. After spending years praying for their daughter to come home, they are now forced to accept the horrifying reality that Katie's presence inside their house is bringing something incredibly dangerous with her. Meanwhile, the changes within Katie continue growing worse. Little by little, she begins influencing the minds of Sebastian and the other members of the family.
Yes? Baby rabbit.
Without fully realizing it, Sebastian becomes driven to help peel away the layers of skin, ancient seals that have been suppressing Nazmaranian's power inside Katie's body all this time. The more layers that are removed, the stronger the dark force hidden within her becomes. Eventually, that power fully awakens. The Cannon household transforms into a place of absolute terror. The family is no longer facing only Katie, but also figures that now seem to be under the control of Nazmaranian itself. Even Carmen's corpse, which should have remained dead, begins moving again under the demon's influence. Carmen violently attacks Zaki before forcing a live scorpion into her mouth, tearing apart her throat from the inside. Despite being badly injured, Zaki suddenly remembers something extremely important. She still remembers the ritual chants Camila spoke in the VHS recording years earlier while sealing Nazmaranian inside Katie's body. That is when Zaki realizes the ritual may not only be capable of sealing the demon, but also transferring it into another vessel. In other words, there is still one final way to stop all of this, but the method requires a terrible sacrifice. Someone must willingly become the next living prison for Nazmaranian. Without hesitation, Charlie chooses himself. As a father who lost his daughter for years only to get her back in such a horrifying condition, Charlie decides to accept the fate that Katie should never have been forced to carry. The ritual finally begins. With Zaki helping recite every chant she remembers from Camila's ritual, they attempt to repeat the sealing process once more. Slowly, a thick black liquid begins leaving Katie's body before transferring into Charlie, signaling that Nazmaranian has found a new vessel. Once the ritual is completed, the chaos finally comes to an end. Katie, who had barely been able to speak or recognize anyone, slowly begins regaining awareness. She starts recognizing her mother and siblings again, almost like the little girl she used to be before the nightmare began. But the peace comes at an incredibly painful cost. Charlie has now become Nazmaranian's new vessel. To ensure the demon remains sealed and never threatens anyone again, Charlie must suffer the same fate Katie once endured. His body is then sealed inside a coffin bound with chains, ensuring Nazmaranian remains imprisoned within him. In other words, Charlie sacrifices the rest of his life to save his daughter and prevent a far greater disaster from happening. Even so, the bond between father and daughter is not completely broken. Katie sits beside the coffin where Charlie is being kept. Slowly, she begins tapping her fingers in Morse code, the same way Charlie once taught her when she was little.
He says he loves us.
Several days later, Larissa contacts Detective Zaki once again to discuss Charlie's condition and whether there may still be another possible solution. After everything that has happened, both women slowly begin realizing that Charlie should not have to suffer this burden forever. A few days later, Larissa and Zaki travel to a prison to visit Camila, who is surprisingly still alive. She is the true mastermind behind the entire tragedy. Camila looks shocked when she sees Larissa and Zaki standing before her. But before she can fully understand why they came, Camila is immediately sedated to prevent her from resisting. It turns out Larissa and Zaki already have a plan of their own to return all the suffering to the person who started it in the first place. They bring Charlie, still unconscious as Nazmaranian's vessel, and place him directly in front of Camila. With Zaki once again reciting the ritual chants she remembers so clearly, the transfer ritual begins one final time. This time, the purpose of the ritual is to move Nazmaranian out of Charlie's body and into Camille instead. Camille ultimately becomes Nazmaranian's new vessel, turning her into the demon's eternal living prison for the rest of her life. However, the cycle is never truly over. The responsibility and secret of keeping Nazmaranian sealed now rest in the hands of Larissa and Zaki. They become the new guardians tasked with making sure the demon never escapes into the world again to bring destruction and death. And with that, the story comes to an end.